Alright, so stuff you need to know. What kind of stuff you need to know, we don't know. But maybe you can ask the questions for stuff that you really do want to know about, and Jim will be able to answer them for you. He's brought a whole bunch of rods and reels. I'm judging it. I'm looking at possible bait lures, bass lures, let's say board bass lures. Lures you can probably use for muskie too. Jim, let me ask you a question. Do all lures work for all fish?
They do it for me.
Do they do for you?
Just like Al Linder told me years ago one day, I said to him, Al, are they biting? I was talking to him on the phone and he said, Jimmy, they're always biting for me.
They're always biting for me, he said.
And it's true, the guy's one of the best, fishermen in the world, period, ever.
All right, so we're going to try and get this catfish to bite, or that's not the deal?
Can't hear you,
Are
Andy.
you going to try and get this catfish to bite your lure?
I don't want the catfish.
You don't want the catfish?
I'm not man enough to take a fish that big off the line.
Only a towel.
Only I tell him.
Leo tried to, but that's okay. All right, so what are we going to talk about?
I'm going to talk about a bunch of lures, a bunch of things, Andy, that I like to use, things that I do that can catch a lot of fish for me, and do catch a lot of fish for me, and that I think that the people, if they put it to work, they can catch a lot of fish too.
All right, so stuff you need to know. What kind of stuff you need to know, we don't know. But maybe you can ask the questions for stuff that you really do want to know about, and Jim will be able to answer them for you. He's brought a whole bunch of rods and reels. I'm judging it. I'm looking at possible bait lures, bass lures, let's say board bass lures. Lures you can probably use for muskie too. Jim, let me ask you a question. Do all lures work for all fish?
They do it for me.
Do they do for you?
Just like Al Linder told me years ago one day, I said to him, Al, are they biting? I was talking to him on the phone and he said, Jimmy, they're always biting for me.
They're always biting for me, he said.
And it's true, the guy's one of the best, fishermen in the world, period, ever.
All right, so we're going to try and get this catfish to bite, or that's not the deal?
Can't hear you,
Are
Andy.
you going to try and get this catfish to bite your lure?
I don't want the catfish.
You don't want the catfish?
I'm not man enough to take a fish that big off the line.
Only a towel.
Only I tell him.
Leo tried to, but that's okay. All right, so what are we going to talk about?
I'm going to talk about a bunch of lures, a bunch of things, Andy, that I like to use, things that I do that can catch a lot of fish for me, and do catch a lot of fish for me, and that I think that the people, if they put it to work, they can catch a lot of fish too. I went in a tournament once all the way from Midland to Perry Sound. I forget how long it took. It took like 2 hours to get there, and the water wasn't wavy or nothing. We fished for about 15 minutes, caught the fish, we had them, and we came back and weighed them in. We had like 24 pounds.
Did you win?
Wait now. Then the second day we go over there, we're there for like 8 minutes, we've got like 25 pounds, this is for like 6 fish, and we come back, and we actually missed winning by 2 ounces. Like when you get close to 50 pounds, we're a couple ounces shy of 50 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
But forget about the tournaments. Just the number of fish you can catch with crankbaits. It's absolutely amazing. And when you're fishing these things out there, I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they're fishing a crankbait is that they try to fish it too fast. They think because the word crank's in there that this is what they got to be doing. They got to just be winding it back to the boat. When a crankbait really does its thing, and when I think back to the days I've caught the most and the biggest fish, are days when I've been reeling that bait back and you get it down to the bottom and you're fishing at about that speed, right there. You're right down where the fish are, gives them lots of time to look at it, and you can see there's one following it from the far end, he's having a look about. These fish, I'll guarantee you, if you're out fishing today, you wouldn't be doing well, because usually these fish in this tank, these are all farm-raised fish, and they're usually ravenous. Anything you throw in there, they'll bite, so the fish are really, really off. But fishing that bait back slow, I like to use the word ricochet when you're doing it, because when you get that bait and it goes down to the bottom and it hits a rock or a boulder or a little piece of hard sand on the bottom, watch, I'll bring it along to this little rock. See when it hits that rock and goes boom and goes off to the side? Well, when you mimic that when you're out fishing in the wild, that's when you catch the fish. It looks like a real easy meal. So don't be out there trying to bring it back too fast. I got too much of this stuff out there. Guys just want to wind that bait back as fast as they can. Yeah, the odd day you can catch a fish like that. Like Italo will catch the odd one like that. Al Linder will catch the odd one like that. But if you want to catch a bunch, you got to fish it back really, really slow. Slow and methodical is the deal with these baits. Don't be in a rush. Just wind it down, and that's what you want it to do right there. Just go along the bottom. Oh, got tangled up in the line on it. Just go along the bottom, reel it in nice and slow. You know, you'd be amazed how many times you're out there fishing where you're probably on top of this many fish and you don't get a bite, because as you can see, the fish are just not biting out there. Now, when it comes to rods and reels, if you can afford stuff that's specifically for it, see the way that rod bends from end to end? That's what you want. The reason for that is quite often when a fish, whether it be a bass, a walleye, could be a big muskie, anything, could be a big, what's that pond? Bellamy Pond, Larry. It could be a big old giant in Bellamy Pond. Larry has a cottage on this place when I went to it, caught a few fish in it, but there's more fish stories have come out of Bellamy Pond. I think somebody has a blow-up bass that's about 9 pounds with a sinker in its belly and some kind of a remote control, and they haven't come up to boats to go away or something. Because you hear all these stories about these giant fish, but you never see. What's the biggest one you ever caught in there? 6 pounds? That's a giant bass. So you're the one who caught it. You ruined that lake. Did you catch it with a crankbait?
Yes, I did.
You did? You're not just saying that. You're sure?
Red and white. Lucky
Oh, it was red and white? That was a daredevil.
Lucky 13.
A Lucky 13, eh? Cool. One of the old-fashioned lures. But using that flexible rod, because quite often when they eat these baits, there's a couple of treble hooks in there, and they don't always get the hooks in their mouth, like they might get them on the outside edge or something. And if you use a rod that's too stiff, or you use braided lines, I'm a real stickler for monofilament still. I use Power Pro on almost everything I use, but for crankbaits, I use monofilament so I don't rip the hooks out of the fish's mouth because it has a little bit of stretch. Monofilament lines can have like 20 to 30% stretch, so that means if you've got 10 feet of line out, you could have a couple of feet or 3 feet before it would break with the stretch. That's a lot of give, so if you got 40 feet out, you could have 8, 10 feet of stretch. That's the reason why so many fish used to get off when you use monofilament, because people never really set the hook hard enough. Now with braid, all you have to do is just move it just a little bit, just boom like that, and you have a hook up, and it's done, and the fish aren't going to get off. But once again, because there's no stretch, you got to use a rod that's a little more flexible or be a little more nimble. And I'm telling you, I can't stress this to you enough. You got to bring it back slow. As soon as it gets to the bottom, just bring it along nice and slow. Make it a real simple target for those fish. Give them lots of time to eat it. And one of the neat things about a crankbait is, if the fish are not active and they will not chase, the crankbait's down where the fish are already. It's not like you're fishing with a topwater and you might have to swim up 5, 6, 7, 8 feet to get to the lure. If he's not really hungry, he's not going to go up to get that lure. But if your lure is already down where he is, it makes a really big difference because he doesn't have to move as far for it. It's a real big difference. But if you got crankbaits out there, I'm telling you, man, you got to use them. But who's got crankbaits in their tackle box out there? How often do you use them? Five casts and put them away? I have guys come to me and they say to me, "Oh, is that lure ever neat? I can't believe that." They say, "What? How old is it? Look at all the scratch marks in it and everything." Well, I used it for a day and a half because you made 1,000 casts with it. I see so many guys that go out there with a crankbait, they make 5, 10 casts, boom, 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 they get nothing, and that's it. They're out of there. They don't want to use it anymore. It's just one of those things. If you don't put it in the water and get it wet, you can't catch fish with it. Show you a neat little trick here too to store your rods and reels. Everybody knows the old bow and arrow deal here with getting your line tangled. This is always stuck in something when you're trying to pick it up. Take your line, hold it out like that, just spin the rod like that and let it wind around it, and it winds it in between all the guides. Now you don't have the old bow and arrow effect, and boom, there you go. It's a done deal. Store away real nice and easy. Hey, when I'm done too, don't forget, we got a lot more to do here, but when I'm done, I'll have all this stuff down here and you can have a look at it. Now, something else that we use a lot, we fish a lot with, is spinner baits. And I want to show you, most people use, or not, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of people use a spinner bait, double willow leaf blades or something like that, and basically this is what they do with it. And that catches fish. When the fish are active, you bring a spinner bait back like that, it's splashing, it's vibrating in the water. You might use a heavier one and let it get down a little bit deeper before you bring it back. Hold your rod tip closer to the water, it'll stay down deeper in the water. But it's got a lot of flash, a lot of vibration on it. It attracts a lot of fish, but you know when it attracts the fish? Once again, when they're really hungry, when they're on the move. So you're bringing that bait back, They're just not going to follow it. They're not going to do anything to it. That old trout likes it because it's flashing. He thinks it's dinner. Now, if the fish are biting, no problem. You bring a spinnerbait back like that. In fact, when the fish are really hot, you bring it back really quick like that, they'll absolutely crush it. Like, you can't reel a lure fast enough that you won't catch fish, or that the fish can't catch it. You got to remember that. So don't be scared to bring it back really, really quickly. Something I'm doing is I'm fishing a lot of braided lines with spinnerbaits now, which was one of the last things that I turned over to when I started to use braids. But I'm using really flexible rods, really, really flexible rods with lots of give. It's one of those Voltaeus rods that Shimano has, and you don't have to worry about breaking them. You don't have to worry about breaking them. They're not going to break. The only guy I've ever seen break one of these rods was Bob Azumi last year at the Sportsman Show, and he tried to bend the rod into a V and make it a V for Bob, and he had the whole rod twisted up into a V, and it eventually broke. But I mean, you can do whatever you want with these things. I've been using these ones for shows and demonstrations. You bang them on the tank. The odds of you breaking one of these is really slim. Really, really slim. Inexpensive rod too, but you know the nice thing about it, with all that flex, makes it great for fishing a spinnerbait. Makes it awesome for fishing a spinnerbait. Now that's if you fish a spinnerbait quickly and the fish are active. Always a good way to start in the morning with a crankbait or a spinnerbait like a double willow leaf or something like that, because it allows you to cover a lot of water quickly, and if the fish are active, you're going to catch that fish. But I see guys out there trying to do it in the afternoon now. What they try to do is that same thing. And by changing to a different spinnerbait, now you're going to use one that's a bit heavier, has a single blade on it, just one great big blade. This one's called the Midnight Special, and I got a nice trailer on the back here, a 3X trailer, which is really stretchy, and the fish can't yank it off. The secret with these ones now is when you're fishing this one, you bring it out, you bring it along, and you let it helicopter down. Fish it real slow, lift it up, let it go down to the bottom. And a little bit of flash, lift it up, let it go down to the bottom really, really slowly. You know there's a big stump or something out there, you reel it up to the stump, you kill it, you let it settle down. The big old bass is hiding beside that stump. Could be underneath a dock, could be beside some rocks, beside a patch of weed. If you're fishing in the city, could be a shopping cart or an old barrel or something, like a bicycle, whatever, urban structure, that type of stuff, they'll hide in there. Look at them all sitting there looking at it. But just lift it up and let it flutter down to the bottom. And it gives the fish, once again, it allows you to cover a lot of water, but it allows you to, to get down where the fish are, closer to the bottom. These guys are just about ready to eat because they're all turning and looking at the lure go by, but they won't chase it. But it's another one of those things that if you don't get out there and do it, you can't catch fish with it. Around the old handle doesn't work. This is not a good one. I got it all around the handle. Anyways, just fish it, let it go down to the bottom. It'll work really, really well. It's something that I've done a lot. I've done for years, and a lot of guys always come to me and they say, "Big Jim, we always see you fishing with a single-bladed spinnerbait." And the secret, when that lure is falling, that blade helicoptering over the top as it goes down is the secret, because while it's falling and getting down to where the fish are, it still looks attractive, and that's as far as I'm concerned, the lure has to be doing something to catch fish most of the time. But we're going to touch on something else here in a minute, that you're actually looking not to have that happen. You want something to be really, really quiet. Now I want to go over another